Wolfgang Beltracchi would have to be the most successful forger of the 21st century. The German, self-identifying hippie and his wife earned 30 to 50 million euros in forged artworks, living a lavish lifestyle, working with his wife, Helen, being the Bonnie and Clyde of the art market, using far-fetched scenarios to sell their artworks. Instead of copying famous works, he would deeply immerse himself in the artist's style, known themes, and creating an entirely new artwork based on what he thought the artist would have painted, creating artworks that were known to exist but lost to history, and evidence of their existence through auction catalogues and old photographs, sourcing genuine historical paint that the artist would have used, buying old canvases and stripping off the original paint film, then painting his over the top to pass forensic detection, forging stamps and letter of provenance. Beltracchi claimed he started forging artworks as early as the 1970s, possibly even earlier, and his last known major forgery that led to his arrest was the painting a red picture with horses attributed to Heinrich Campendonck in 2007, selling for 2.8 million euros. Born Wolfgang Fischer, 1951, in northern Germany, in the town of Geilerkirchen, his mother being a private tutor and his father an art restorer, and in his free time his father created copies of legitimate artworks to sell at markets for extra income. Later as a teenager, briefly attending art school, but dropping out shortly after, being largely self-taught, living a very bohemian lifestyle, and travelling extensively throughout Europe and North Africa. During the 1970s, living in London, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam and Mallorca, not working at the time but selling small paintings at flea markets, but still painting his own works at this time. In 1978, 3 of his paintings were exhibited in a museum in Munich, surrealist paintings with photographic realism, managing to sell one artwork for just over 15,000 marks, around 8,000 euros today. Later, in the 1980s, starting afresh in Dusseldorf, with his legitimate art career stagnating, Wolfgang decided to set about forging artworks rather than continuing his own paintings. He made a clever choice of which artist to forge. He chose little-known artists to the general public, but big names in the art industry, rather than going for big names such as Van Gogh or Monet, Renoir or Degas, which would be very hard to forge, both forensically as their works are very well known and documented. Also, with hugely famous artists like that, it is much harder to fake the provenance of the art piece, provenance being the history of the actual artwork and the history of its life and who owned it. Older artworks appear in catalogues for auction houses and are often owned by famous art dealers, have stamps of previous owners and a large paper trail. By choosing artists like Max Ernst, Erich Heckel, August Mach, Fernand Leger, much less well-known artists but whose work still achieves immense sums at auctions, much easier to forge, and then being greatly cheaper than works by, say, Vincent van Gogh, meant that they were more liquid and easier for possible clients to be arranged at an auction. Forging of great artworks. The forger never copies an existing artwork but creates an entirely new piece. One great tool for this is catalogue raisonné, a catalogue from an old auction house many years ago, often with no picture, just a small description of the piece and the size of the canvas, with the piece lost to history such as in wars, fires and theft. But the piece being known to exist at some point, it is also known that Wolfgang produced test paintings that with his own money he had sent to laboratories to have tested so that they would fit the correct time period with correct pigments, varnishes, canvas and the structure that the canvas lies on. In a chance encounter during the spring of 1985, he met Otto Schultz Killinghaus, rather a more well-dressed and better-rounded, cultured gentleman than the hippie Wolfgang. Otto being accepted by the art dealers and fitting into their circle more, Wolfgang would paint the pictures and Otto would be the middleman to move them onto sale. Later, in 1992, living on the outskirts of Cologne, he met the then 34-year-old Helen Beltracchi, marrying the following year, and Wolfgang Fischer then taking the name of his wife, Beltracchi, interestingly telling his new wife quickly about his forgeries, and Helen helping Wolfgang with the provenance of the paintings. During the 1930s, Hitler gave the order for many modern German artworks to be confiscated. Thousands of artworks since then have never been recovered. Alfred Fleckstein was a German Jewish art dealer who was persecuted as soon as the Nazis came into power and had his business attacked and later his artwork confiscated from his Dusseldorf gallery. 6 months later, Fleckdime, penniless, fled for Paris and then to London. In Fleckdime's collection, he had many great artists' work, but with no photographs of what they looked like. This is where Wolfgang and Helen would choose to base their fakes on. There being a great desire in the art market for those works to reappear, and the resale value could be colossal. The next part of the story is where Helen would play a vital role. Her grandfather, Werner Jaegers, as a teenager, he lived next door to Alfred Fleckdime. The men never met, but creating a fake scenario that Fleckdime sold Werner the numerous paintings, and had him hide them, as they were modern artworks. Under the Third Reich they were considered degenerate work, also adding the fictional part that they were later rediscovered by the grandchildren. And for authenticity, Wolfgang forged a fake label, an image of Fleckdime himself, and stuck it on the back of the artwork for extra provenance. The couple coming up with far-fetched scenarios of the artwork's life. In 1995, when they were trying to sell a painting by Heinrich Campendonck, titled Girl with a Swan, at an auction house, asked for a further proof. This is where they staged a photograph of Helen's grandmother, and in the background there were the paintings. But what really happened was Helen, dressed up in period clothes, used a genuine old camera, producing an old grainy yellow photograph. The Campendonck painting by Wolfgang later sold at Christie's for over $100,000. The couple would use the Werner Jaeger storyline many times over. Different experts were also brought in to authenticate the pieces. An expert on one of the Wolfgang's favourite artists to imitate, Max Ernst, the art expert Werner Spiess, mistakenly and wrongly attributed 7 works by Wolfgang to be genuine. Curiously, and against all industry standards, Spiess was given a fee for authenticating the painting, something that never should have been done. The Beltracchis would have a close call. In 1998, a suspicious dealer had informed police. With enough evidence, an inquiry was opened into Wolfgang. The Beltracchis quickly left Germany in their camper van and headed to France, telling family and friends they were going on a round-the-world trip. The German police tried to look for Wolfgang, and even with a tip-off that he was in France, but still unable to find his whereabouts. Just under 2 years later, the German police closed the investigation due to lack of evidence. In 1999, the Beltracchis bought a mansion in the south of France and did it up, telling locals that they had made money from previous property renovations. As the new millennium came, Wolfgang increased his productivity, turning out more fakes than ever before in his new home. Later in 2007, a painting titled Woman with Red Hat, in the style of Dutch artist Kisan Donnen, selling for €1.5 million. Celebrities, hedge funds, art dealers, museums, all would fall under the spell of Wolfgang. Even the actor Steve Martin bought a fake Campendonck. The hippie couple spent money as quickly as they earned it, on lavish holidays abroad, wines, champagnes, even treating themselves to cosmetic surgery and both having facelifts. In Cologne, November of 2006, a forged painting signed Heinrich Campendonck, titled Red Painting with Horses, selling for €2.8 million, a new record for a Campendonck. The director of an art gallery in Geneva, Sofia Kamareva, would be the woman who triggered the downfall of Wolfgang. A client of the gallery had just called to say that he brought a masterpiece by Campendonck, and she would be proud, and he wanted her to oversee the transaction. Because of the immense price, she treated it with caution and fetched a catalogue of previous works by the artist and saw they had lengthy titles and descriptions. But this work had no title, dimensions, or even a picture. Noticing the Fleckdime label on the back, she phoned Ralph Jensk, the only expert on Alfred Fleckdime. He too was highly suspicious of the portrait label stuck on the back of the painting. The label, now in the spotlight, having been noticed on many other paintings with minor provenances, suspicious of the painting, they had it delivered to London, and the art forensic expert Nicholas Easlaw's laboratory for testing, and finding it had coffee stains, had been used to artificially age the label, and on testing of the paint, titanium white was discovered, a pigment that wouldn't be widely used till the second half of the 20th century. Later the case was brought to trial, and with an 8,000-page document and countless witnesses, making it a media sensation around the world, but ending anticlimactically as they both pled guilty on the first day of the trial, after reaching a deal with prosecutors, Helen receiving 4 years imprisonment, Otto 5 and Wolfgang 6. But with the German justice system, the trio would only have to be in prison at night, being allowed out on day release as long as they had jobs to attend, and with all being released by 2015. The German government seized €1 million from the Swiss bank account. The house in Freiburg and the mansion in the south of France were both sold. Over 60 paintings have been uncovered as forgeries by Wolfgang Beltracchi, and he personally admitting to between 2 and 300. And with potential career earnings between 35 and €50 million, it's quite a mystery where all the money went. But now in the public eye, Wolfgang and Helen have made multiple TV appearances, as well as documentaries and book sales. Quite the roller coaster for the former drug-taking hippie from northern Germany, becoming legends in their own right as the Bonnie and Clyde of the art world.